Another episode of the Growth League podcast. I'm here with my special guest, Bill Neff, head of marketing at YETI. You probably have one. If you don't have one, get one, but you love them. Bill, beyond the blocking and tackling of marketing, what fills you with joy as it relates to leading this brand?
Certainly for me, it's the team I get to work with every day. And get to walk in and look around the table and so to speak. I'm a big sports guy, so the analogy of teams and lining up and we talk about everybody has our routes to run and nobody needs to be looking at someone else's routes. Just trust the route's going to be run. So for us, it's like getting to line up with my team every day is really fun. And then I think the work we get to do at YETI and the way that we do it is just inspiring to me. So.
Awesome. So bring us back a little bit, like before YETI, what were some of the big milestones along your journey that sort of shaped the way you show up today with YETI?
Like pre-YETI?
Yeah, pre-YETI.
Yeah. So, my fourth job out of college was with Under Armour, and that was in 2003. And my 3 jobs prior to that were just sort of bouncing around. I was an assistant buyer for moderate blouses and 2-piece for a department store. I was, I got this job at this company called Boathouse Sports, which was selling tracksuits and things like that. But I didn't know that the 2 mentors there were going to be really early at Under Armour. But it was just relationships, and I didn't realize building a network was important, or just like being a good human and listening and all those things that you don't like set an agenda for. You just do. You're just living that. And so then, but I quit that and I went back to St. Louis and I was working for my dad, take over the family business. I was like, ugh. And then I ended up getting a call from one of those mentors, Shannon Fabrash, that was like, hey, you want to come work for this Under Armour? And I knew just because I knew them, but most people didn't know what it was. It was 2003, super early. It was definitely a Baltimore-based East Coast football lacrosse brand. They just launched women's, which actually didn't go very well for them. But I went out there and we were sales guys, and the mantra, and I've said this so much, but the mantra from Kevin Plank, who was the founder, was locker room talk. And it had nothing to do with protect this house and all those things came later. It was locker room talk. And so, our group called on Division I colleges, but you had to have a football team. So in the States, like someone like a Georgetown University that was great in basketball, didn't have a Division 1A football program, we didn't call on. So it was only football. But it was pounding the, ultimately the locker room. So just being there in that space and you got to know everyone. And so that trait of showing up over and over and over and being intimate with those locker rooms is something that stuck with me forever. And so from there, I went to go start a tequila company with a good buddy of mine, and we had a celebrity owner that I thought we were going to be rich. And I've said that before. And it didn't work out that way. And it was actually 5 years of my life that was really hard. Personally, professionally, it's like those driving 401k years that, we didn't have a 401k. Yeah. So retirement, all those things I wasn't worried about. I was having kids. I had 4 kids when I left there, but it was this loyalty to my friend that made me stay for 5 years, but it was pretty dark. And I learned a lot about myself. And so in that moment of, just like that moment of questioning what was next for me, and really a lot of probably victimizing myself of like, why did I leave Under Armour? Why did I do this? I came out and I look back on those 5 years as probably the most transformative of like, and what I learned was what not to do. And what I learned was what didn't work. And we had one of the loudest voices from our celebrity owner that you could ask for. And it didn't matter because it wasn't real. And so for me, learning what not to do there was great. And I didn't know what I thought my career was over. I was, late 30s, early 40s, actually late 30s. And interviewing for UPS warehouse positions. Like I was just whatever. I just needed to figure this out. And I got a call through a network from a friend of mine at Under Armour that there's this little brand in Montana called Sika Gear. And they, we're looking for a category marketer for whitetail, of which I wasn't a huge whitetail hunter, and I actually had only been once before. I was more of a waterfowl hunter, and I was like, my friend was like, we can't get anyone to move to Bozeman. And I was like, ugh. I mean, that was like one of the top 3 places I want to live. And, and so luckily I got the job, and I was in founder land again. And our founder, Jonathan Hart, was just as inspiring as Kevin Plank was to me, but I just study that founder mentality, and I really believe in that. And so I would have stayed there forever. But YETI, I saw what YETI was doing. We were working with YETI on some things, just because back then, like hunt brands like sort of did stuff together, events and films. And I saw YETI and what was happening, and I had seen it before at Under Armour, and I was like, okay, they're getting ready to go. And the pace is what I missed. And so, luckily, the vice president of marketing at the time at YETI was looking for someone who had some sports marketing background, and I had matched that with my time at Under Armour. And so that job is what landed me at YETI, and I came to be our director of community marketing, which was all of our ambassadors and all of our lodges and things that we work with now on building relevance for our product. And then I just done a lot. 9 years. Like, I haven't been in marketing the whole time. I was in a product role for a little bit. I worked on the European side of the marketing world for a short stint, and then I was on the commercial side in a sales job. And just now, I in the past, I guess now 9 months, I've been back on marketing, and it feels like home to me. And luckily for us, or luckily for me at least, I was part of. I got to know Roy and Ryan, the founders, but our CEO, Matt Reinchess, is a big believer in and he's close to Roy, and he understands that founder mentality of staying close to your core. And Matt's been a mentor of mine, and someone that has allowed me to do the things that we do in marketing at YETI. So.
You referenced it a few times, and even earlier this week when I heard you talking, you have an affinity for owners and founders, and every stop along your way, there's been some dialogue around, or some narrative around, like there was a loyalty or a buy-in, or what is it about that? Do you seek that out?
Yeah, I guess if I was sitting here on my deathbed and I look back on it, I probably would say, yeah. And I'm getting in the later part of my career. But yeah, I definitely think at this point, I would say I would seek it out. Like, if the founders aren't involved or the founder's spirit isn't there, then I think I would have a harder time buying into the reason why we're showing up. Yeah. Like, what are we doing? Yeah. And so, yeah. And part of it is I'm just an admirer of people who have the guts or the audacity to do it, because I don't think it's not easy. Right. It's not easy at all. And, the audacity to do it, the risk-taking ability is just a trait that probably isn't in me, but it's something I respect massively. And I think my strength is the ability to help, grow it, and with the right team. I wouldn't take any credit for that at all, but to latch on to that nugget and to buy into it and then to help nourish it. So
you said you saw something in YETI that reminded you about something with Under Armour. What was?
Yeah, I mean, it was the pace, and it was it was the tailwind. Like, it was the okay. Like, Under Armour was it was such a crazy time in 03 and 04 and 05.
Click clack.
Yeah, and the footwear launch, like, it was just. And Kevin and Brian and Kip and all those guys, and they're, gosh, I can name all of them, from Jamie Bragg to Brian Cummings and our little team with Shannon and Tori and Suzanne and Casey and Chris and all those guys. All these guys we were all like in our 30s. We had one guy, Bill Kraus, who's still a mentor of mine today, who was our SVP of sports marketing at the time, who was like, he turned 40, and it was like, the old guy, and so we had this naiveness to us that allowed us to fail fast, to not overthink it, and to go hard. And that's what we were doing. And so that pace and that, unapologetic belief in what we were doing. And we were selling tight t-shirts.
Yeah, right.
It wasn't like it was tight t-shirts, but we were unapologetic for these tight t-shirts.
But it was so much more than that to us. I mean, when I was playing football in high school, 02, 03, 04, and I went to Western Michigan University, played football. We got their new cleats, Under Armour, like that. It was more than tight t-shirts, man. It was.
I called on old in Western Michigan, and Deion Van Adder was the equipment guy there, and I mean, it was. You're right. It was go time when you put that on.
When you put that tight blue, ours were blue in high school, to that tight blue Therma thing, it was like, and it smelled like football.
Yeah.
It was way more than tight stretch anyways.
Yeah. Well, and the product was great. And we would always talk about bounce and other people were making it and Nike was starting to make it, but like you'd put it on and after three wears, it was like all saggy and stuff. And we had a really good product. And I think that's what ultimately got us famous and we were quick to market it, but it was a gap. Like Kevin Plank found the gap, and it was the gap that is shorts, which were compression shorts. He wasn't changing, and it was a lycra material or whatever it was. Like it was wicking moisture, but his cotton t-shirt under his shoulder pads wasn't, and he was changing that 3 or 4 times in practice. Yeah. And he asked the equipment manager, "Hey, do you have a shirt that's made out of these shorts?" And he's like, "No." He's like, "Okay, I'm gonna go make it." He found the gap, and that's what I love about founders, and that's what Roy found in a cooler, and that's what Jonathan Hart found in high mountain hunting apparel that wasn't living up to what the hunter needed in the world of sheep hunting and elk hunting and Western hunting. And so there was the gap. And I just believe that founders that have this ability to find that gap, man, it's like it can be magic.
That's amazing.
And that's what I saw in YETI. That's what was happening in this tailwind, in this community adoption, in this, I was like, okay. And Sitka Gear had it too, but wasn't at the pace that YETI was having it.
Right. Different game they were playing, different trajectory or pace. I think you're right. Like when you look in someone's eyes at YETI and you see that little, like, let's effing go.
So it's so funny. And I've been talking about that since I got back. We are like, I'm really not on social media much.
Yeah.
And I'm a huge MJ guy. I'm a Michael Jordan guy, but I have been studying. The only thing I watch on Instagram is interviews with Kobe Bryant. And he's so professional and so polished, but then, so it's interviews of him and then it's interview of other people talking about him. I study that mentality just because the way that he competed and his preparation for competition was so intense. And it was just this, was a refusal to lose. And actually that was coined by Shannon, who hired me at Under Armour. Right. It wasn't about you like win at all costs. It was this refusal to lose. And in the preparation to be that way is like actually to refuse that is crazy. So this Mamba mentality, like, and again, I was an MJ guy. I used to be kind of a Kobe hater back in the day. Right, it was I am like all in on Kobe Bryant right now. And so we talk about Kobe Bryant face down at YETI. Like we are like, it's really? Time. Yeah. And so, mentality. I love it. And that's and you either have it or you don't. And you don't have to have it. There are plenty of jobs out there and plenty of amazing brands out there that are just sort of doing it. And it's a lot more smiley and it's a lot more like we show up as a team to compete and not just as like, we're not on an afternoon community trail run. Like that's not why we're there. And, but I don't fault people for being there. Like that is to go for a community trail run where I've been on those bike rides that you're just like there to ride your bike. But like when we show up at YETI, like we're there in a different spirit for sure.
So sweet. I mean, tying into, I can see it in your eye. Yeah. So you may disagree with me on this, but I personally believe that YETI has sort of written the book on leveraging stories, storylines, storytelling as a driver of commercial success. What do you believe it is, truthfully believe it is, about story that can leverage or facilitate or yield a purchase?
Yeah, I don't know. All I do know is that stories move us to think and to open our minds. But I think when we tell our stories, it's really to showcase our understanding of what the struggle is or of what that emotion might be. It's our understanding to allow you to really like connect with the end consumer. Like, we get it. We get you, and we're in it with you. And we want, I really think that's what stories do, is it just allows humans to connect. I mean, the average person buys a $400 cooler. We hope you only need to do it once, actually. Yeah. So it's like, what else is YETI to you if you have your cooler, and of which we are proud to say, buy it once and don't ever worry about buying it again. Yeah. Now, if you need another one for a different pursuit, great. Yeah. We hope that you have a couple, but more than anything, like, we make it so you don't ever have to put it in a landfill. All our products, our bags, our drinkware, our cargo equipment, our blankets, our chairs, like, everybody thinks we're a drinkware cooler brand, but we're way more than that. But we build it with the intent on not to buy another one.
Wow.
And so that's hard. But what can we be to those people outside of that is just an understanding that we're in this human, thing together. Yeah. So
I got to tell you a quick and very funny story. So we were at the YETI Presents the other night. Tarpon, what else?
Sandbag and Jimmy Chin.
Yeah,
and then Grandpa Gordon.
Okay. So me and a guest that I brought, we're just sitting there. I look over at him, and he's just like hanging on every word, and as was I, right? Like, we were just like super impactful. So we get up, and I'm with a couple other colleagues, younger sort of Gen Z type. We're all sitting there watching, and we get up at the end, and me and this guy, I was like, did that hit you as hard as it hit? Like, that was unbelievable. And the whole way up out of the theater, we're just like heart to heart, right, on this thing. We're going on and on. We're walking back to the truck, and then the girls in our party say to Robin, the guy, he's like, so what did you think about it? He was like going on and on. It was just unbelievable. Like, brought out so many emotions, and I was thinking about my dad and like all this stuff, and he thinks he's connecting with the girls, right? And so he says, so he finishes his long monologue, and he says, "Oh, what do you guys think?" And then they were like, the exact opposite. And we were just like dying laughing but I think what we learned there is that isn't that what brands are meant to do? Is meant to at the exact same time bring in people in that emotional way that are meant to be part of that community.
That's right.
And completely repel you.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. We have those inside the walls of YETI. We could talk about what our favorite films are and the ones we kind of don't like and all that stuff. And so our hope is that the library is, kind of, there's enough in the library or vast enough to like connect on some other level.
It was so good.
And I love those stories because it does show like it is about intimacy, and intimacy is with the consumer isn't about mass marketing. Yeah. It's about connecting on a really individual base. And so when you do that, or you try to do that, you're not going to connect with everyone, but we hope that we can connect in other ways.
Yeah. No,
that's funny.
Totally. One of the big purposes of this show is curating the experiences and perspectives of marketing leaders in all different industries, and kind of band together to give license to CMOs, marketing directors, VPs, that there's a lot of different ways to skin a cat and playing this game of marketing leadership. And it can be an isolating role sometimes when there's pressures from the non-marketing CEOs and CFOs. What words of encouragement, I think, and advice would you give to marketing leaders trying to figure this friggin' thing out when they're being asked to build attribution models? And
so at about age 40, and it actually was at YETI. It was so we lost our VP of marketing, the one that hired me, and our CEO, who is our CEO now, Matt Reinchest, said, "Hey, I just need you to step in and just hold the team together for a little bit." And what I thought would be 3 or 4 months, because I thought they'd get a search going, it lasted for about 2 years. And so I wasn't on Matt's senior leadership team, but I was reporting to him for marketing as this interim space. But it was like the most formative 2 years of my life, because what I admitted to myself and I admitted to Matt, was that I don't know. Like, I do not know. And what I've learned over the last, I guess 6 or 7 years since then, was that they don't know either. But I think if you can really be open about and honest with yourself, like the discussions you can have, and if you know your brand well enough, like you will directionally do the right things, and you're gonna fail. And I think the opportunity to fail and fail fast and learn and not make the same mistakes is crucial to CMOs that are in a role that maybe they are a little bit uncomfortable with. I mean, I've been open about, it's not, I don't know if it's diagnosed imposter syndrome. Like I don't have any idea, but I've always had this, like, I remember walking in the first time at Boathouse Sports, and I had this job, and Shannon, who hired me at Under Armour, but was my boss at Boathouse, or showing me a mentor. We walked into an equipment room, and he looked up, and this equipment manager, who was Don Barnes, who was at University of Missouri. He had every single Division I football helmet on, like, over the lockers. And Shannon started being like, naming them all off. And I probably could have named the University of Missouri, because I grew up there. Probably could have named, because I wasn't a huge college football fan at the time, because Mizzou sucked, and I was more of an
Not
NFL
when we
guy.
played them. They did Chase Daniel and they killed us.
Yeah. So he could name them all. I couldn't name any of them. And I remember that moment of being like trying to fake it. And he asked me the University of Hawaii's helmet, and it had a rainbow, and it happened to have Hawaii on, like, that right on the face mask. So I was like, Hawaii. I got through the question. But I remember walking out of there being like, man, like, I don't know, and I have a lot to learn. But I learned to not pretend to know. And I think that's the best advice I can give any CMO, is like, you're going to be put in situations, you're going to be put in front of boards, just be yourself. No answer in marketing is right or wrong. Like, we don't know. And so, but it's just about having conviction of where you think you can move whatever brand or whatever company you're working on. So I think that's my only real advice, is like, don't pretend to know. I've done enough of that in my life, and it's gotten me in places that probably I had to squirm out of, and just be honest and truthful. And people are here to help, and they want to help when you can be vulnerable in front of them. So that's what I would say. And I'm that way managing up, and I'm that way managing down to the people on my team. So
what happens specifically, do you think, when you do pretend to know?
I just think you get caught in positions of, like, they'll dig deeper on you, and they'll ask more questions. And now you're in this, like, situation where you're going to end up having to say you don't know,
right.
And again, it's a guessing game. Even whether it's Gary Vee saying, hey, you need to put a Super Bowl commercial is the best ever. And it is a guessing game of what we're doing on how we ultimately are trying to, he even said it. It's like, he doesn't know, he just pays attention. But, like, how we market our brands and how we connect with our consumers, we are all trying, and we're all trying to figure it out. So, like, there isn't a silver bullet. And so I always go back to just be truthful with yourself, be real with your consumers, and be relevant to who you're trying to ultimately, be friends with. So
I love it. I want just one more question here, which is, when you're leading a marketing function, all marketing leaders know this, part of your job is the blocking and tackling, again, of the actual go-to-market activity, the campaigns, whatever. But the other half is just equally as building people, empowering people, establishing cohesiveness. Like, how do you approach the game as it relates to the nurturing of people?
I just am a big... So, and I only know it because of the way that I was treated getting up. Like, I just are growing up in my career is just be human with people. Like, there are bosses out there that believe in the hierarchy, believe you should talk to your boss before you talk to me, or your manager before you talk to me, or whatever. Like, I'm not a fan of that. I believe, like, I have known my route everywhere that I've been. And I ran it as hard as I could. And sometimes I dropped the ball, but we got back in the huddle and we went again. But they knew like the work they get from me is I would run my route. And if I didn't know how to run it, there were coaches to help me learn my route. Yeah. And so for me, and I'm not one that's like up in the press box with my binoculars looking down. Like if I'm a position, and I don't need to be the quarterback, I can be the center. It doesn't matter to me, because there's a lot of people on our team that do a lot of amazing things that I could say, man, you're more of the quarterback than me. But we all have our routes to run, and I'm not afraid to get in the huddle with anybody and talk to anybody. So the way that I always approach it is, I'm an open door. Very rarely do I close my door. The only reason I close my door at my office is because I talk loud. And if I'm on a call, I annoy people. And so it's an open door. Come talk to me. There is no, hierarchy that you have to do. Now, I want people to be able to go to their managers and have those same conversations. Yeah. And so I don't need everyone coming to me and either complaining or asking questions or throwing a D off me. Like you can, but that's not what I want. But yeah, it's just open door, treat people. So my senior vice president, so Bill Krause, I used to call him University of Utah. And in 2006, University of Utah, we just signed him at Under Armour. And they went, we signed a couple people. We just had footwear. And Utah was one that I was really proud of. I was living in Denver, calling on our Western schools. And so the first game was against Michigan, and it was in Rich Rodriguez's first year there. Nice. And Utah came into the big house and we beat them. And we ended up, and Bill Krause was there with me. And he was just there with me. He proceeded to go to every Utah. He flew from Baltimore, home game with me. And we watched them go undefeated. And then we watched them beat Alabama in the Sugar Bowl that year. And it was but his presence and showing up with me, he's 2 layers above me. Yeah. So like I had a person, and that person was calling on Auburn and doing some other stuff. But like that showcase of showing up with me every single game with Coach Witt, it meant so much to me on like how bosses are supposed to be. He was there with me. Right. And so that's how that's what I would like to hope people think of me as the leader of marketing right now at YETI. So wow.
One last word on your journey. You talked about almost every opportunity was initiated by a mentor or someone within your network that sort of catapulted the opportunity. Because outside of that, you were just kind of doing your own thing. How critical is that in terms of for young marketers? What's the word of advice?
I was talking to some students yesterday, and like my biggest advice is just say yes. Like your first job out of college, it was my 4th job out of college, and just say yes. And even to the point now, and I'll just tell this is a funny story. So my boathouse job, when I was interviewing for it, I found out through this job, and I needed to move to Kansas City because that's where my girlfriend was, my current wife now. And I was like, I got to move. Yeah. And so we went, I interviewed with Boathouse, and I called the hiring manager, this Eric Stropback, and I was like, Eric, I wasn't a sales guy, and I was buying women's moderate blouses and 2-pieces, and it was like I was not qualified for this role. And he's like, well, I'm over in Kansas. I was living in St. Louis. He's like, I'm over in Kansas City. I'm at the Hilton by the airport. You can come. We're kind of down a paths with someone already. So, but if you want to come, you can. I can have lunch with you tomorrow. Got in my car, said yes. I drove across the state, called in sick to Famous Bar where I was working, and I interviewed with Eric. And Eric and I hit it off. Yeah. And we had a love affair with the Appalachian Trail and some other things. Didn't really talk who I knew in sports because I didn't know anybody. And but he really we just hit it off. So I was like, felt really good. I'm gonna move to Kansas City. It was good. I go back to St. Louis, and he says, and I get a call. He's like, hey, Bill, I really loved our interview, but we're gonna go with the other candidate. She just had a little more experience, blah, blah, blah. I was like, no problem, no harm, no foul. I get it. This girl ghosted him. No. So never called him back. They couldn't get a hold of her. I have no idea who she is, but if she knew what my career would be totally different right now if I wouldn't have got that boathouse job, because that's where I met the Under Armour people, and that started catapulting kind of where I was going. All of the stuff I don't have a clue what I would have done. And so she says no. She totally ghosts him. He calls me. He's like, Bill, we can't get a hold of her. Do you want this job? I was like, yeah, I'll take it. So I say yes. We moved to Kansas City, doing that. Not loving it. My wife gets into her master's at SIU Edwardsville in St. Louis. I moved back. I work for my dad. I'm just kind of bouncing around. I don't know exactly what I'm going to do with my life. I have nothing figured out. So all those students, all these young marketers, you think they have it figured out? Like, don't worry about it. Take that pressure off you. Give yourself grace to just learn about yourself, learn about what you like to do. And so it was one of those things. And then out of nowhere, I get this opportunity to move to Baltimore. And so I say yes. And most people who live in St. Louis don't ever leave St. Louis. They stay in St. Louis forever for some reason. So I said, let's move to Baltimore. So my wife and I, we took off, moved to Baltimore, and then we had our first child there. And then they said, hey, we're going to open an office in Denver. My dream was to live in Denver. And I was like, yes, so we'll go to Denver. So we say yes to that. And I move. And then you just say yes, like say yes to things and be open to those experiences, because none of the experiences and like what we do is not who we are. They're just experiences. And so, I've learned that along the way too, is like when I left Under Armour, my self-identity was attached to that, and it's like, and I've learned through a number of different things now of like, who we work for and the brands we work for aren't who we are. It's just what we do at the moment. And so for me, it's like, just for young marketers, don't get caught up in the perfect job. Like, know what you like to do, know what gives you excitement. You're not going to get it right all the times, and just say yes to those opportunities.
We're going to leave it there.
Caleb, thank you, sir.